I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening. Today I'm going to talk about 4 really easy to grow herbaceous perennials. So these are what I would call starting perennials, plants that someone who is beginning in their gardening career can grow in the garden and be successful with. And we'll start off here and I'll just give you a little insight as to what herbaceous perennials mean. Herbaceous perennials are plants that start off their life below ground level, come into growth, so you get their foliage coming up, then they come into flower, they look brilliant for a certain length of time, the flowers then might set seed but usually just die back down, you're left with a bit of foliage and then that foliage dies off, and it's usually through the winter. They are normally summer growing plants, and that means that they come up in the spring with their foliage, up with their flower through the summer, back down, and then they are dormant through the winter months, which means you won't see any growth there during the winter months. Occasionally, some of the really early spring ones will do all of that growing period in spring and then be completely dormant right the way through the summer. But for this video, we're really doing summer herbaceous perennials. So we'll start off with this. This is Heuchera. Heuchera are really, really useful perennials. This one is chocolate Ruffles, a good old variety that has excellent large chocolate brown foliage. It has flowers. The flowers come up above the foliage, and those are sort of white to straw coloured, just dainty flowers over the top. You're really growing this perennial for its foliage because it offsets all sorts of other plants. It can be grown in a container, it can be grown in the garden. Just give it a good amount of garden compost, it will be very happy, sun or part shade. The plant is a clump former. That means it comes from a central bit of growth here and puts on small side shoots which just stay within the clump, making it get larger. You would expect a plant to get about a foot across, 30 centimetres, by just under a foot, say 10 inches, 20 to 25 centimetres high. So a lovely dome shaped purple foliage which looks fantastic from probably about March right the way through to the end of October, November. So giving you a good amount of colour right the way through that time. Very, very easy plant to grow. Heuchera chocolate Ruffles. Then we have the hardy geranium family. There are some brilliant hardy geraniums out there. I chose this particular variety. Again, it's quite an old variety, but it's a good doer. This is Geranium macrorrhizum Ingwersens Variety. And Ingwersens Variety has beautiful pink flowers, quite large flowers, about the size of a 10p piece. I don't know in other money, but UK 10p piece, that's about the size that they would be, something like 2 centimetres. The foliage is fabulous. It's slightly hairy. They will tolerate quite dry conditions, they will tolerate shade, they will tolerate sun. The foliage, if you rub it or you touch against it or you're working amongst it, does smell a little bit, but it sort of smells of pineapple. This is a plant that puts on side shoots. So this is the main plant here. This is a piece here going off on a side shoot like that, which means that the plant spreads around and it makes a good ground cover. So this is good ground cover for underneath your shrubs, underneath trees, under hedges, but also can be grown in a container or at the front of the border because it's not going to get very high. Foliage about a foot, 30 centimetres, but it will grow to probably 60 centimetres, that's 2 feet, within 2 to 3 years. So it is going to make large clumps. Really lovely plant. Starts off with lovely green foliage, then as the foliage goes over, it starts to go these lovely colours, and in the autumn the foliage looks fantastic. So not only does it flower, but it has good autumn foliage. Easy to grow, really bomb-proof plants. So these are what I would suggest for people when they're starting out, because there's nothing worse than trying a plant and you don't succeed, whereas these you are going to succeed with. This is the reason for highlighting these particular plants. Geranium Ingwersens Variety. Then a good old stalwart and a plant that I absolutely adore, would be without, is Alchemilla mollis. Now some people say it's an absolute thug or a plant that is above its station. That is because it is a plant that grows really well. So that's what you want. You want plants to succeed. This will make really big clumps. So it is just going to make big clumps. It's a little bit pushes out its elbows. Fabulous foliage. When the dewdrops or the raindrops sit on these leaves, it looks amazing. It really, really does. So you get a fabulous foliage clump on this, something around about a foot high, 30 centimetres, maybe 45 centimetres, by at least 45 to 50 centimetres, nearly 2 feet across. So you're talking about a big clump. And then it puts on these amazing green yellow flower spikes. Now these come on in the spring, so they come out usually May time, and you get covers it and it just looks like frothy yellow green mound. But what you've got to remember is when you see these starting to turn colour from this beautiful green yellow to a more straw colour or brown, that's when they're about to seed. And if you're quick enough, you cut all of that off and you stop it seeding around. That's how it is so good, is because it's a free seeder. But then there's nothing wrong with that. If you haven't got much ground, you can just pull them out later. There's no problem with that. A really easy, good, bulletproof plant to grow. This will go in sun or part shade. If it starts to look a little bit untidy, you can gather all of the foliage and the flower together and cut it off near ground level. It will regrow and look good again and look tidy. That can be done usually around about August, and that way you can keep the plant looking good. I recommend Alchemilla mollis. It's brilliant. And then the last one in this series of plants that are really easy to grow, good for somebody starting out, is this one, Sedum Autumn Joy, or what is now listed as Hylotelephium Herbstfreude. This is a really good plant. Now these are sometimes known as ice plant. They are a succulent. So if you snap open the leaves, you will see that this is all very, very moist. It's water filled. So they store their own water in their leaves, which is brilliant because that means that they are drought resistant. So these will grow in a sunny spot, really poor soils. Again, you can container grow, but they are easy to grow. They start off the season just as the foliage stays quite low, then gradually goes up and puts on these fantastic flower heads. Now at the moment they're still in bud because they flower in the autumn, and they flower right the way through the autumn. These are going to become bright pink, well, sort of a dark red pink, I suppose is a better description. Really super old variety, and it's a great plant. It's attractant for all of the pollinators. Easy to grow, easy to look after. Just remember when you are cutting back and taking dead heads off a plant like this, that you want to leave a little bit of stem, something about 2 inches, probably about 10 centimetres in height, above, so that you know where your plants are. Because for a beginner, if you go and cut herbaceous perennials right the way down to ground level, because they disappear, you will not know where they are. So leaving a bit of stalk there marks where the plant is. Now there is a 5th one here, but this one is Aquilegia or Granny's bonnets, which are fantastic, very easy to grow. However, they are short-lived, so I wasn't really going to keep it with these true herbaceous, but this is a self-seeder and it doesn't really matter where they self-seed. But Aquilegia for a starting garden, giving you some tall height in the spring, beautiful coloured flowers, you can't go far wrong. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel.